We're back. We're here with Donna Newcomb. She is a candidate for the Chelmsford School Committee. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, certainly not a stranger to me, but we want to introduce you to the community. I'm sure there are people who haven't had an opportunity to meet you. So, just give us a little bit of background about who you are and what motivated you to run for Chelmsford School Committee.
Sure. So I'm obviously a resident of Chelmsford. I lived here for about 20 years. My kids are grown now, both are in college. I have a daughter, Emma, who's a freshman at University of Maine, and Jack, who's a junior at Worcester State. I had the opportunity to become involved in the schools, obviously, when they first started out. And I participated quite a bit in the PTOs for the schools that they were members of, as well as the school councils, and then also the Council of Schools, which is a combination of all of the PTO presidents and liaisons from the particular schools. And it was becoming involved in that I really developed an interest, in the school system. I'm also a teacher. I've been a teacher for 30 years. I teach at Lowell High School. I'm a special education teacher. And so, I'm very passionate about the schools. But one of the other things that really kind of sparked my interest in the school committee was back in, I think it was about 2005. It was when we were talking about transportation fees. I was at that school committee meeting to hear what it was that they had to say. I wasn't in favor of it at the time. And, I was listening, and I happened to be sitting next to a woman who was also a South Row parent. That's where my kids went to school. And the subject of Chapter 70 came up and how we were underfunded. And so we got this idea that rather than going to the parents first, that maybe we should go to the state and ask them to fund us appropriately before we asked the parents to pay for transportation. So that set off a 2-year adventure down to the State House. And we started something called the Initiative for Local Aid. And we dedicated a lot of our time and energy also working with other towns to try and improve Chapter 70 funding. And it was just a terrific movement. We had so much support from the Chelmsford community. We had all of the schools were involved. We were literally delivering boxes of letters to the representatives down there and to Susan Fargo at the time, Senator Fargo. And it really got their attention. And so they started calling and saying, what is going on? And then one of the other highlights of our time down there was we had a big rally at the Hall of Flags. And we had many cities and towns who were also struggling with the same issues that we were join in with us. And we't a big rally outside, and then we came in and had a big rally inside, and it got a lot of attention. And I think that particular year we got an increase. I think it was 12.43% increase.
Wow. Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned Chapter 70 because it's actually seems like a very simple formula on the surface, but the reality is these foundation budgets and all the things that go into it make it very complicated.
Incredibly complicated.
And it's easy for them to kind of make it look on the surface like, oh, well, this is just how it works. But I think Chelmsford already kind of got the raw deal in the beginning.
Yeah, they did.
And we can't get out of it. And it's
No, but I think that there are some things that are changing. And so certainly one of the things that happened, and it started back in 2014, was taking a look at the foundation formula and trying to make some adjustments in that, adjustments for healthcare costs and special education services. And this is one of the things that's been able to gain a little bit of traction. And so there's, it's still, it went through the whole process. They had the hearings and whatnot, but it's still, alive. And I think that, with a little bit of a nudge from enough cities and towns, I think that, we can get things moving forward again.
Well, I know that you're a brave soul. You announced your candidacy back when I think there was an incumbent potentially running, but now obviously it's an open seat. So what were some of the things that have motivated you to make that leap?
Well, I had always said that I was not going to become involved in running for school committee until my kids had graduated from school. And that had not so much, obviously, it can be a little tricky if you have your kids in school and you're on the school committee, but really my motivation there not to become involved was because I really want to spend all my time with my kids. Yeah. I really enjoyed being involved with them and all of the activities that they were involved in, and I didn't want to feel torn. So it didn't take me long. Emma's only a freshman in college, and and watching some of the things that were happening with the school committee, I just felt like, well, this was the time. This is the time that I wanted to get involved, and wanted to, share some of the things that I've learned over the years. Because I've been through the entire 12 years, and learned a lot. Learned a lot about the town, and to try and bring some of those skills, forward to be able to help out in some way. And as I said, being a teacher for 30 years, education is my life, and I really, I really feel very, very passionate that I want to have a great school system here in Chelmsford. And I think we can. I think we have all the right pieces, and I think we just have to bring things together and develop a vision, and then start working on, how it is that we're going to achieve that.
Now, I know that full-day kindergarten rolled out, this past year.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on how everything's going, or what, do you support it?
Did I support it? I think I was on the fence, and I'm going to be honest, okay? So I think that, obviously that there's a lot of benefits to it. I do worry, sometimes for kids that there's so much pressure on them, to be achieving academically. And, I want them to be able to have time to be able to develop their social skills and,
be a kid.
Yeah, exactly, be able to play and things like that. But I think they've been able to find a nice balance in full-day kindergarten for kids to be able to do both of those things. And so, and I also think that the other thing that happened too is by spreading it out a little bit, there may be actually some less pressure on kids because they're not trying to jam all of that academic material into such a short amount of time. So from all accounts, it seems to be going pretty well.
That's awesome.
Now, I know there's been, it's been a little tumultuous at the school committee level right now just because parents don't feel like they've been heard. Is that something that you think you'd be focused on and trying to kind of bridge, the divide that kind of seems to be out there right now?
Absolutely. I think that there's a lot of different ways that we can look at this. Okay, so first of all, I think the first question is, do parents have the opportunity to be able to share their concerns? And what are some of the venues that they can do that? So certainly it opens public input at the school committee meetings, as well as through their PTOs, the council of schools, and the school councils. Those are all opportunities for parents to have input, and I would certainly encourage parents to be able to do that. So if we've decided that there's enough opportunity, then the question is are people listening when there is the opportunity for parents to be able to speak? And I think this is where some of the breakdown in communication is happening. There's parents don't feel like they're being heard. And so I think we do need to take a look at that and figure out better ways of being able to address their concerns. For example, I took a look at the web page, and I really think that needs to be kind of cleaned up a little bit and made it a little bit more user-friendly. I think we also have to ask parents, what kind of information do you want? Because there's a lot of information that goes home and a lot for parents to have to be able to sort through. So what is the most important thing that you need to be able to know, and where can we put it so that you can get it at a moment's notice? And then I think the other thing too is we have to develop some standards around if parents are reaching out to a teacher or a principal, whoever it might be, what's the timeline for getting back to them? And I think we have to be consistent across the district in that, so the parents know what they can expect and the people can be held accountable if they're not doing it.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
One question I have for you, and this has come up on several conversations I've had with people, is around kind of the length of the school year. With all the snow days and everything we've had, we're going to be going close to the end of June.
Right.
Do you think it would be possible to ever consolidate, the February vacation and the April vacation, maybe just do 1 week in March, try to give kids maybe an early release in the summer versus, making them go, as long as the end of June?
So, I don't know, to be honest with you. I think that we would have to have a conversation, with the staff, with the district, and with the parents as well to see what would be feasible. I think one of the things that we need to start doing is having these kinds of conversations and putting all options on the table and then deciding whether or not they're viable. But I think we have to have all those options in front of us as we kind of sort out what's what. One of the other subjects that's come up is blizzard bags, for example. Should we have blizzard bags? And again, I think the best people to be able to ask about that particular subject would be your teachers. Like, is it feasible? So for example, in this last round of snow days that we had, a lot of people didn't have electricity. So if it's online work that they have to do, then it wouldn't have been possible. And so then how would you hold kids accountable? Would you make them make it up afterwards, after they've resumed school? And as I said, I think that these are the kinds of things that we really need to go back to the parents and the teachers and the staff and say, what do you think? What do you think is the most feasible, viable option?
Well, one of the things that's every year candidates always say, oh, I want things to be more transparent and all this stuff, right? But the one thing I've found is that there's so much information, right? Like
Right.
you almost get inundated.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, here's all these online portals and this way, and it's like,
Right.
it's almost overwhelming to the point where how do we do a better job of streamlining the information so that parents know exactly what is very, very important versus what may be, minutia, I guess is the way to describe it.
Right, and I think that that's where we have to go back to the parents and say, what is the most important information that you need to have, right at your fingertips? And I think, it's going to vary, right, from family to family, what they're looking. If your child is involved in, the band, for example, you may be looking for band information, or it might be athletics, or it might be homework, and, how do you go about, checking all of these things online and being able to develop a system that will get that information to parents, but then also what's the more, like immediate, the district-wide. So, for example, the school calendar, okay? Any changes in that, maybe that's got to be right, smack dead center, important parent information on the website so that that that's the only place that you have to look for district-wide important information.
It's interesting. So I've gone on the calendar a couple of times when I'm just trying to figure out, because my brother has kids in the system, like, when end of school events are.
Right.
It is kind of hard to figure out
Yes.
that calendar because
Yes, it
there's
is.
so many events going on.
Right.
So I honestly never, I'd text him, I'd try to look, he wouldn't get back to me, and finally I just call his wife, I'm like, just tell me when this thing is, because
Right.
it's so hard
Right.
to,
It
figure
is.
out.
It's a lot of information, and
Yeah.
you want to be attentive to, as I said, there's all of the parents,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of activities, a lot of great things happening in Chelmsford. But how do we do that in a way? Is it on the parent tab? Is it on the main page? And these are the kinds of things I think that we need to be talking to parents and say, what would be most helpful to you? And that would be the kind of important input that I would really like to hear from people, about, in terms of communication, what is the best way to have that happen?
A couple of things that have come up over the years as far as policies go. It seems like sometimes we have like a zero tolerance policy, or just, no wiggle room. And I know that we had, situations where like somebody wanted to have their kid in a particular school system and they felt like they had extenuating circumstances. What's your feeling on those type of policies and how they should be addressed?
So I think that there's two things that we can take a look here. First is the policy, and then is the practice, okay? So the policy, that may be a little bit more difficult to change right away, but we can make adjustments in our practice. So for example, if students are transitioning from elementary school to middle school, if the staff, the teachers and the principal feel that they're going to have some difficulty transitioning, then maybe they need to be identified to the incoming principal and teachers, and some additional steps or services, and I'm not talking about necessarily through a 504 or an IEP, but just good practice, things that we can do to help with that transition. Maybe a little bit more communication between home and school, maybe some meetings right away with guidance counselors, maybe some social groups so that way they can develop some friendships, to have some support in the classroom. Those kinds of things I think that we can do.
Almost to like set them up for success.
Exactly.
Before they
right.
even.
And so that doesn't necessarily require a change in policy, but I do think that we have to take a look at what we do as a practice and see how we can improve that before we make a change in the policy. And then if a change is necessary, then we can go ahead and do that.
A big issue that's talked about obviously nationwide at this point is safety in the schools. Have you put any thought into that and
Every
how
day.
we handle it?
Every day. So we just had, actually, you probably read about it in the Lowell Sun, we just had an incident at Lowell High where that we were received of notice of a threat. And the student was arrested last night. And so, there was increased police presence in the schools today and security and whatnot. And do I think about it? You better believe I think about it all of the time. And I think that we have to look at this in a couple different ways. One is we have to be very proactive. So again, identifying kids who may need some additional supports, working with them in schools, working with the families to provide them supports outside of school as well. Kids are only in school 180 days. That's half the school year. We don't want them to be left untreated or unsupported for the other half of the year. So identifying those kids, and then, as I said, putting interventions in place that will support them and help them. And then we also need to be talking to the teachers about what kind of training do you need. We're talking about ALICE training, I think, for next year. I think it's in the budget. And I think that's a great way to go. So that in the event, that something happens, that they will have the training that they need in order to be able to keep kids safe.
What is ALICE training?
It's actually stands for an option-based, and it's alert, lockdown, inform, confront, and evacuate. That's what it stands for. So that rather than a shelter in place, now you are exercising whatever options may be appropriate. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if you happen to be in a part of the school that the intruder was not in, that your option would be then to evacuate right away. So taking a look at these kinds of things. I think doing a safety assessment of all of the schools in terms of what do they need in common areas, hallways, in terms of coming into the building and exiting the building. What do we need to do to improve that? And that both means not only in terms of making sure that we have cameras and locks on the doors, but also really educating people about not letting people into the school that you don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody knows that, at the high school, if you're running late, you knock on that door, you text your friend, come down, open the door for me. Mm-hmm. We have to really kind of discourage that kind of thing, especially if it's somebody that you don't know. You don't want them just coming into the school. So those kinds of things as well. I also think we need to talk to teachers. What do you need in your classroom? If you're going to shelter in place, what tools do you need? Or to either shelter in place or to be able to evacuate. They know their rooms the best. They know their kids the best. And I'm not talking about necessarily the individual student, but I'm talking about the age group. How do they process directions? What is their level of, understanding? How many steps can they take at one time? Obviously, your younger kids, they maybe only process 1 or 2 directions at a time, especially if they're feeling very anxious. The older kids, maybe only 1 or 2 at a time. I don't know. But I think that these are the kinds of things that we should be talking to the teachers about. Again, what tools in your classroom do you need? So I know, for example, in my classroom, by the front door, unfortunately, I have a door that locks on the outside and opens out, So I know that I need to keep my doorknob locked. I have a file cabinet right there that I would put in front, and I also have a big poster they would put over the window so you can't see in. And then I would have some other pieces of furniture nearby that I can move. Same with the back door. I also have a door stop in that file cabinet to jam under the, in between doors, between the classrooms, to make sure that there can't be movement from one door to the next. So making sure the teachers, what do they have?
Plan. You have a plan.
I have, and there is not a teacher that doesn't think about this, There just isn't. And what are you going to do to keep your kids safe? And it's a really sad time, in education that we have to think about these things. Of course, we're not alone because churches are thinking about it, and other venues where there's a lot of people. Exactly, all of these things. But we want to make sure, as I said, that we're talking to all of the people who are on the front lines there, and making sure that everybody is able to stay safe.
Well, I think that that's great because, unfortunately, my daughter's in the 2nd grade, and we have to have these kind of conversations, and it's just not really what I was looking forward to doing.
No.
Or thinking
looking to do
about
math mountains. That's what I was.
Or volcano building.
Sure. I mean, when I started in education 30 years ago, this was not even a topic of conversation.
Yeah.
It was, about keeping, calm in the cafeteria and, transitioning inside and out for recess, or whether or not they were changing to their gym clothes or whatever it might be. It was those kinds of things. And when I think about where we are now, it's absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
Stunning.
Any last thoughts on how we can help improve the Chelmsford public school system? I had asked your opponent. A lot of people use Zillow, which is a real estate website. They're connected to a site called greatschools.com. They rate our schools. Is there a way to help maybe boost some of the ratings of our schools, maybe through better class sizes or whatever we need to do? Has that ever been a consideration for you?
Yeah, always. I think providing the optimal learning, environment for kids is my goal. I think that teachers need to have the right tools and resources available to them to provide the instruction for kids. And instruction in today's classroom looks very, very different. You have teachers who need to provide differentiated instruction. So, providing all of those kinds of tools, as I said, for them in order to be able to provide great instruction, I think will help. But keeping an eye on class size, the types of courses that we're offering at the high school, the types of extracurricular activities, all of these kinds of things I think need to be evaluated on an ongoing basis. And I think that, and when I mean ongoing, and then assessing, where do we need to make up, the difference? Where do we need to close up some of these gaps? There are a lot of ways that we're already evaluated, but, I think there's some other ones that we need to consider. So like a popular way of rating the school system may be through MCAS scores. But the thing is MCAS ends in the 10th grade. We still have 2 years of high school left. Now what, okay? So what should the standard be then? Is it for college acceptance? Well, what if kids don't want to go to college? Is it gainful employment? For kids who do go to college, is it that they make it through 4 years of college, or do they need to take remedial classes before they begin taking college classes, for credit? I think these are all things that we should be taking a look at and finding out how is it that we can best service the kids in the school system.
I'm sure people are very excited about your campaign. If they want to get involved, is there a way that they can reach out and get?
Yes, I have a campaign page, Donna Newcomb for School Committee, and I also have a website that people can go and learn a little bit more about me. It's donna.newcomb.com, I think it is. I actually have it here in my pocket, but and then certainly people can just reach out to me, message me on Facebook or something like that. I'm out and about, trying to get out to as many things as I can. I'm actually on my way to the BIM-PTO Science Fair.
Oh, awesome.
Yep, I'm gonna go see a little friend of mine named Finn and learn about the life of a lobster.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Well, we'll have you look at the camera, ask for the vote, and.
All right, thank you. I respectfully ask for people's vote on April 3rd. Please come out to your local elections. They are the elections that will have the most impact on your day-to-day life. And while you're there, as I said, if you would cast your vote for me, I would greatly appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on. We wish you the best of luck on the upcoming election, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.